3 days after my wife Eleanor was laid to rest, the house felt like it had lost its purpose. Not empty exactly, but hollow, as if every sound echoed a little longer than it should. I sat in the living room with my hands folded, staring at the recliner across from mine. That chair had been hers for 42 years. Every evening, she would curl up there with a book, her reading glasses slipping down her nose, always pretending she was not dozing off when I caught her. Now the chair just sat there, unmoving, accusing me with its silence. Grief does not arrive all at once. It creeps in. It waits. It finds you when you least expect it. One moment I was thinking about whether I had fed the dog, and the next I was reliving the sound of frozen dirt hitting the top of her casket in the Madison Cemetery. That sound had followed me into sleep for 3 nights straight. People tell you time heals. They are wrong. Time does not heal. It teaches you how to carry pain without dropping it. The funeral itself passed like a blur. Faces, hands, murmured condolences. Some I recognized. Some I did not. Everyone said the same things. She is in a better place. She is no longer suffering. She would want you to be strong. I nodded like a polite stranger at my own tragedy. One thing kept bothering me though. My daughter Emily and her husband Ryan arrived late. I had already taken my place by the grave when I heard a car pull in too fast behind us. Doors slammed. Emily hurried across the grass, her heels sinking into the damp February ground. Ryan held her arm tightly, almost too tightly, like she might collapse if he let go. They stood in the back. Emily avoided my eyes. Ryan stared straight ahead at the casket. His face was stiff, unreadable. He did not cry. He did not bow his head. He did not even flinch when the pastor spoke Eleanor's name. After the service, they stayed less than an hour. Ryan said Emily was exhausted and needed rest. I told them I was fine, that they should stay, that I needed family around me. Ryan smiled politely and guided Emily toward the door anyway. That was 3 days ago. I had not heard from them since. The phone rang, sharp and sudden in the quiet house. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was not ready for another neighbor reminding me how sorry they were. But habit took over. I answered. Thomas Walker, the voice said. Yes. This is Harold Benson. I own the Benson building downtown. Eleanor rented the second-floor space there for years. My heart tightened. Eleanor had run her small antique restoration business out of that building for nearly 3 decades. I found something, Harold continued. Something Eleanor left with me before she passed. You need to come here right now. What kind of something? I asked. I cannot explain over the phone. And listen carefully. Whatever you do, do not tell Emily or Ryan that you are coming. I sat up straighter. Why not? There was a pause. I heard him inhale slowly. Because Eleanor made me promise. She said your life might depend on it. The line went dead. I sat there with the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding like it used to when I was a young man overseas and danger announced itself before you could see it. I was 72 years old. My knees hurt when I stood. My hands shook when I tried to open tight jars. I was not the man I once was. But Eleanor's name had been spoken. And those words, your life might depend on it, did not belong to idle imagination. I stood, my joints protesting, and looked around the living room one last time. Her reading glasses lay on the side table. The book she had been reading sat open, a bookmark halfway through. She would never finish it. I put on my coat. The cold outside bit into my lungs as I stepped onto the porch. The sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that promised snow but never quite delivered. My hands shook as I unlocked the car, and I could not tell if it was from the cold or something deeper. If this was a trap, then so be it. I had lived through worse. And if Eleanor had left something behind for me, something important enough to frighten Harold Benson, then I owed it to her to find out. The drive downtown took 15 minutes. I barely remember it. My thoughts kept circling back to the funeral, to Emily's averted eyes, to Ryan's clenched jaw. The Benson building stood quiet, its brick exterior darkened by age and weather. Eleanor's old shop on the ground floor was shuttered now, the sign removed. Seeing it like that felt like losing her all over again. I parked and walked around back to the narrow staircase that led to the second floor. Each step creaked beneath my weight. The handrail felt worn smooth by decades of use. The stairwell smelled like old wood, furniture polish, and dust. It smelled like Eleanor. At the top, a single bulb lit the hallway. Harold's office door stood slightly open. No light inside. For a brief moment, I considered turning around. Going home. Pretending none of this had happened. But I had already come this far. I pushed the door open. Harold stood by the window, his back to me. He turned when he heard the door and relief washed over his face. "Thank you for coming, Thomas," he said quietly. "What is this about, Harold? What did Eleanor leave?" Before he could answer, movement caught my eye near the filing cabinets. Someone stepped forward. My knees buckled. The room spun. I reached for the doorframe to keep from falling. My lungs forgot how to breathe. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Eleanor stood 3 feet away from me. Alive. She looked thinner. Paler. But unmistakably her. The same eyes. The same way she tilted her head when she was unsure of how I would react. "Thomas," she whispered. Something inside me broke. Tears came fast and hot, blurring everything. I do not remember crossing the room. One moment I was frozen, the next I had my arms around her. She was solid. Warm. Real. Her heartbeat pressed against my chest. Her hands gripped the back of my jacket like she was afraid I might disappear. I pulled back just enough to see her face, to touch her cheek, to make sure this was not grief playing tricks on me. "I watched them bury you," I said, my voice barely working. I threw dirt on the casket. "I know," she said softly. "I am so sorry." "Why?" She cupped my face in her hands. Hands I had held through 42 years of marriage. Through births and deaths and everything in between. "Because they were going to kill me, Thomas. Just like they killed Michael." The world tilted again. "No," I said. "The police said Michael took his own life." Eleanor's eyes hardened with a certainty that chilled me. "Our son was murdered. And I have proof." She turned to Harold's desk and picked up a worn leather journal. My breath caught when I recognized the handwriting on the cover. Michael's. She placed it in my hands. "Read this," she said. "Then I will explain everything." I stared down at my son's writing, at his name, at the truth written beneath it in smaller letters. The last 3 days cracked open like an eggshell. Nothing I believed was true. I lowered myself into the chair Harold pulled out for me, my legs shaking so badly I barely noticed when he locked the office door. The sound of the lock clicking into place echoed louder than it should have. Eleanor sat across from me, her hands folded, watching my face the way she always had when she knew something difficult was coming. I opened Michael's journal with trembling fingers. The pages were filled with his handwriting, neat and deliberate. The same careful style I had taught him when he was 12 years old, and I handed him his first notebook, telling him that details mattered, that facts saved lives. Week 1. Discrepancies in company accounts. $12,000 missing from quarterly reports. Week 3. Traced transfers to Ryan's personal account. My stomach tightened. Week 6. Confirmed total loss $287,000. Gambling debt suspected. I swallowed hard and kept reading. Found betting slips in Ryan's desk drawer during visit. 6 months ago, Eleanor said, I found the journal hidden in Michael's old storage unit. I hired a private investigator through Harold. Someone discreet. Everything Michael wrote was true. Harold cleared his throat softly. The investigator traced the money. Ryan embezzled over $280,000 across 27 months. He owed over $300,000 to a loan shark operating out of Chicago. The room felt too small. When Michael confronted him, Eleanor continued, Ryan panicked. He saw only one way out. She told me what happened that night. Ryan brought a bottle of wine to Michael's apartment. His favorite kind. He drugged it. Sleeping pills. Enough to stop his breathing. Then he staged everything. The fake receipts. The note. The phone call to emergency services. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit into my palms. And you, I said. Why fake your death? Eleanor's expression darkened. Because I made a mistake. I confronted Ryan myself. Jesus, Eleanor. I thought I could reason with him. I thought I could protect Emily from knowing the truth. Her voice cracked. 2 weeks ago I overheard him on the phone. He said the old woman knows too much. We will handle it the same way. My blood ran cold. He tried to poison you. Yes. He put something in my tea. But I was ready. Harold and I had already planned everything with help from a doctor I trusted. She explained how the staged death worked. The sedative. The falsified examination. The empty casket. You let me bury nothing, I said, my voice shaking. I let you stay alive, she replied fiercely. If Ryan knew I survived, he would have killed both of us. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. I am going to kill him. No. Eleanor stood too, gripping my arm. That is exactly what he wants. We need him alive and confessing. She slid a small recorder across the desk toward me. Are you ready to finish what Michael started? Something old and dangerous stirred inside me. Something that had been quiet for decades. Tell me the plan. We spent hours mapping it out. The money. The bait. The recordings. The exit strategy. Eleanor would stay hidden. I would return home and play the broken widower. He will think you are weak, Eleanor said. That grief has ruined you. I nodded. That is his mistake. I left the building just after sunset. The cold air felt sharper now. The world looked different. Every familiar street suddenly felt like hostile territory. When I pulled into my driveway, Emily's car was already there. The front door opened before I reached it. Dad, she cried, wrapping her arms around me. Behind her, Ryan stood in the living room. Smiling. Watching. The hunt had begun. I forced my shoulders to slump as I stepped fully into the house, letting my posture sag the way grief does when it sinks into your bones. Emily held me tightly, her body tense, as if she was afraid I might fall apart if she let go. Ryan stayed where he was, hands in his pockets, watching me with eyes that never stopped measuring. You should not be alone right now, Dad, Emily said softly. I nodded as if the idea barely registered. Ryan stepped forward, his voice smooth, calm. Emily and I talked. We are going to stay here for a while. Help you get through this. Help. The word echoed in my head. That is kind of you, I murmured. Inside, every instinct I had screamed that this was happening too fast. Eleanor had warned me Ryan would move quickly once he sensed weakness. He was already positioning himself. That night, I barely slept. From the guest room down the hall, I heard hushed voices. Ryan pacing. Emily crying quietly. I pressed my ear against the wall and listened. We are running out of time, Ryan whispered sharply. If your father does not sign, everything falls apart. I pulled back, my heart pounding. The next morning, the door to my bedroom would not open. At first, I thought I had locked it myself in some half-asleep haze. Then I heard the sound from the other side. A deliberate turn of the lock. Ryan's voice came through the door, calm and practiced. "Sorry about this. It is for your safety. You were wandering last night." I had not wandered anywhere. Breakfast arrived an hour later. Stale toast. A glass of lukewarm water. Enough to keep me alive without drawing attention. Isolation. Control. Weakening the target. I recognized it instantly. I spent the day studying the room like I used to study terrain. Loose floorboard near the radiator. Window that opened onto the side yard. Heavy pipe that could be removed if needed. This was no longer a home. It was a containment area. Emily came in around noon. She would not look at me. "Dad," she whispered. "Ryan says it is temporary." I let my voice shake. "I am confused, sweetheart. Why is this happening?" She flinched and left without answering. That night, Ryan stopped outside my door. I smelled alcohol through the crack. "You think you are better than me," he muttered. Michael thought so too. Thought he could destroy me. I stayed silent. Let him talk. "Anthony does not forgive debts," Ryan continued. I did what I had to do. My hands clenched. Day 2 passed the same way. Minimal food. Locked door. Silence broken only by Ryan's footsteps pacing the hall. Late that night, I heard him again. "I handled it," he said to no one. "I handled all of it." I waited until the house went quiet, then carefully lifted the loose floorboard and activated the recorder Eleanor had hidden in my jacket pocket. Every word outside my door would now be captured. On the third morning, Emily came in trembling, carrying breakfast. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally looked at me. "I think he killed Michael," she whispered. My heart cracked. "Michael warned me," she said. "He said Ryan was dangerous." I was too afraid to believe him. She rolled up her sleeve. Fading bruises. "He said if I talked, he would destroy us all." I took her hand. "You are not alone anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. But before she could say more, Ryan's voice echoed from downstairs. "Emily." She fled. That afternoon, Ryan's phone call carried through the walls. 2 days, he begged. "I will have the money." I knew then. The end was coming. That night, he entered my room with papers in his hand and something hard pressing against his jacket. "Sign." "Tomorrow," I said quietly. His smile vanished. "Tomorrow is too late." He left. I did not sleep. I waited. At dawn, the smell of cooked eggs drifted into my room. Something was wrong. The food shimmered unnaturally. I pretended to gag and refused it. Later, the plant outside my window wilted where I buried the scraps. Poison. I sent the photos to Harold. Ryan was out of time. The next morning, the lock clicked open. Ryan stood there with a gun. "Get up. This ends now." Ryan walked behind me down the hallway, the gun pressed lightly into my back, just enough to remind me it was there. His hand shook. Not from fear of me, but from the weight of the corner he had backed himself into. Desperation does that to people. It strips away restraint and leaves only impulse. The living room looked different in the early morning light. Familiar furniture felt foreign, like props on a stage. Emily stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself, her face pale and drawn. She looked at me once, then quickly away, like she could not bear to see what was about to happen. "Sit," Ryan said. I lowered myself into the dining chair slowly, deliberately. Every movement mattered now. The recorder. Rage burned through me, but I kept my voice steady. "And Eleanor?" His mouth twisted. "She got curious. Too curious. Found the journal. Asked questions. So I handled that too. Same way." Emily screamed. I stood slowly. "That is enough." The front door exploded inward. Shouting. Flashing lights. Armed officers flooded the room. "Drop the weapon." Ryan froze, the gun slipping from his fingers and clattering to the floor. Hands yanked him backward. Metal cuffs snapped shut. Detective Harris stepped forward, his expression grim. "We have everything." Ryan's face collapsed. His eyes darted to Emily. "You did this." Emily stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "I wore a wire." Ryan's scream echoed through the house as they dragged him away. Moments later, Eleanor stepped inside. Alive. Ryan stared at her in disbelief as he was pushed out the door. "Impossible," he whispered. Eleanor met his gaze. "You underestimated me." When the police cars finally pulled away, silence settled over the house. Emily collapsed into Eleanor's arms. I stood there, shaking, the recorder still warm in my hand. It was over. But healing was only beginning. The house felt impossibly quiet after the police cars disappeared down the street. The echo of Ryan's scream still seemed to cling to the walls, bouncing softly between rooms that had witnessed too much. I stood near the dining table, my legs weak, my hands trembling as the adrenaline drained from my body. Eleanor was alive. Standing there. Breathing. Real. That truth still had not fully settled into my bones. Emily sat on the couch with her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook, but she made no sound. The silence of her grief was heavier than any scream. Detective Harris approached me gently, as if I might shatter if he spoke too loudly. "You did the right thing, Thomas. You both did." I nodded, though the words barely registered. Doing the right thing had nearly gotten us all killed. The next hours blurred together. Statements. Evidence catalogued. The recorder taken from my pocket, sealed carefully into a bag like it was something sacred. Eleanor answered questions with calm precision. She had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times while hiding in Harold's office, waiting to return from the dead. Emily barely spoke. That night, Eleanor and I slept in the same bed for the first time since the funeral. Neither of us slept much. We lay there listening to the familiar sounds of the house, learning again how to breathe in the same space. In the morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains like it always had. The ordinariness of it felt surreal. Ryan was formally charged before noon. Murder. Attempted murder. Fraud. Kidnapping. The word sounded unreal, like something that belonged to another family's tragedy, not ours. Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "I should have stopped him," she said quietly. Eleanor reached for her hand. "You were trapped. Fear does terrible things to good people." Emily shook her head. "Michael tried to protect me. I did nothing." Later that week, the truth became public. The narrative that had haunted our family for 2 years collapsed overnight. Michael was not a thief. He was not a gambler. He was not weak. He had been brave. When the news broke, messages poured in. Apologies. Shock. Regret. People who had whispered now spoke out loud. We held a small gathering days later. No cameras. No speeches. Just people who had loved Michael finally allowed to grieve him honestly. I stood before them, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "My son died trying to do the right thing," I said. "That matters." Eleanor stood beside me, alive and unhidden now. Seeing her there felt like a miracle no one dared question. Emily stayed near the back, uncertain where she belonged. The legal process moved slowly. Weeks turned into months. Ryan's trial date loomed. Evidence stacked higher and higher. There was no escaping it. His own words had sealed his fate. Emily faced her own reckoning. The prosecutor called it complicity. Her attorney called it survival. The truth lived somewhere in between. I watched my daughter unravel under the weight of it all. Therapy appointments. Sleepless nights. Long walks where she spoke very little and cried often. One afternoon, she came to me holding a folder. "I want to testify," she said. "Not to save myself. To tell the truth." I nodded. "That is the bravest thing you can do." The day of her hearing, Eleanor squeezed my hand so tightly my fingers went numb. Emily stood before the judge, her voice trembling but unbroken. She spoke about fear. About control. About how abuse erases your sense of choice. When it was over, the judge sentenced her to probation. Counseling. Community service. Not freedom. But not a cage either. Outside the courthouse, Emily looked at us with red eyes. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to be better," she said. Eleanor pulled her into a hug. Healing does not happen all at once. Weeks later, the trial ended. Ryan was sentenced to life in prison. When the gavel fell, I felt no joy. Only a quiet sense of finality. Justice does not celebrate. It closes doors. That evening, Eleanor and I sat on the porch watching the sky fade into orange and purple. "We survived," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "But survival comes with responsibility." Michael's death could not be meaningless. That was when the idea took shape. Not revenge. Not anger. Purpose. We would protect others from what had nearly destroyed us. And so the next chapter began. In the weeks that followed the trial, the house slowly began to feel like a place people lived in again, not a crime scene frozen in time. Eleanor opened the windows every morning, even when the air was cold, insisting that light and movement mattered. She rearranged furniture, replaced rugs, repainted walls. She said the house needed to know it was safe now. I understood what she meant. Emily moved into a small apartment across town. Not far, but far enough that she could breathe without feeling watched. She came by on Sundays at first, quiet visits, cautious, as if she were unsure she still belonged. We never forced conversation. Silence had earned its place in our family. One afternoon, Eleanor and I sat at the dining table with Michael's journal open between us. "We have to do something with this," Eleanor said. "We cannot just put it away." She was right. The journal was more than proof. It was a map of how predators operate. How trust is exploited. How silence protects the wrong people. Michael did not die for nothing, I said. But what we do next matters. The idea grew slowly, like something fragile that needed care. Helping people like Michael had tried to help. Families who did not know they were being drained. Elderly parents who trusted the wrong person. Spouses too afraid to speak. We were not interested in attention. We wanted prevention. Protection. Education. It was strange to feel purpose again after so much loss. Purpose does not erase grief, but it gives it somewhere to go. Emily surprised us one evening by bringing dinner over. She moved around the kitchen awkwardly, as if relearning how to exist in the space. Halfway through the meal, she set her fork down. "I want to help," she said. Not publicly. Not yet. But quietly. Behind the scenes. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. "Helping does not erase the past," Eleanor said gently. "But it can shape the future." Emily nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I know. I just need to try." Months passed. Slowly, deliberately, Families are not fixed by erasing damage, she said. They are fixed by learning how to live with scars. A year after Ryan's arrest, we visited Michael's grave together. Eleanor placed fresh flowers. Emily stood back, unsure if she was welcome. "Come here," Eleanor said. Emily knelt beside the stone. "I am trying," she whispered. "I promise." The wind moved through the trees. The world kept going. Later that day, we returned home and unlocked the door to a house that had held both the worst and the best of us. We sat together at the table, not as a perfect family, but as a real one. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. 2 years passed more quietly than the ones before. Not easier, just steadier. Grief no longer shouted in our ears. It spoke in a lower voice now, one we could live with. Eleanor and I learned how to wake up without immediately thinking of what we had lost. Some mornings were still heavy, but most were manageable. The work we had started grew beyond anything I expected. More people came forward. Some with stories of money quietly vanishing. Some with stories of fear that sounded too familiar. We never promised miracles. We promised attention. Care. Truth. Michael's journal stayed on my desk. Not as a relic, but as a reminder. His handwriting became the spine of everything we did. Facts. Patterns. Accountability. Emily changed too. Therapy stripped her raw before it rebuilt her stronger. She stopped apologizing for existing. She learned how to say no without flinching. When she laughed now, it sounded like herself, not like someone pretending to be okay. One evening, she asked if we could have dinner together at the house. Just us. She cooked. Nervous. Overcautious. She burned the garlic and laughed at herself instead of panicking. Halfway through the meal, she looked at Eleanor and me. "I do not expect forgiveness," she said. "But I hope for trust. Someday." Eleanor reached across the table and took her hand. "Trust is rebuilt in small choices," she said. "You are making them." That night, after Emily left, Eleanor and I sat in the living room where the empty recliner once haunted me. It was gone now, replaced with a small reading chair near the window. "Do you ever think about that phone call?" Eleanor asked. "The one from Harold." "Every day," I said. "If I had ignored it." "But you did not," she replied. "You listened when something felt wrong." I thought about how close I had come to dying without ever knowing the truth. How easily silence could have won. On the 3rd anniversary of Michael's death, we held no ceremony. No speeches. We went for a walk in the park he loved as a child. Eleanor brought sandwiches. Emily brought flowers she left quietly near a tree. Later that evening, I sat alone on the porch as the sun went down. I thought about everything we had survived. Betrayal that wore the face of family. Fear that nearly destroyed us. Truth that arrived too late to save Michael, but not too late to matter. People often ask me how I found the strength to face someone who had already killed once. The truth is simple. I did not feel strong. I felt terrified. But love leaves you no other choice. If I have learned anything, it is this. Evil rarely announces itself. It smiles. It marries into families. It borrows trust. And it depends on good people staying quiet. Do not stay quiet. If something feels wrong, ask why. If the answers do not make sense, keep asking. Protect the vulnerable. Believe them. Especially when doing so is uncomfortable. Michael believed truth mattered more than safety. He paid for that belief with his life. The least I can do is make sure his courage did not end with him. Today, Eleanor and I live a quieter life. We drink coffee on the porch. We argue about what to plant in the garden. We laugh more than we cry. Emily visits often. Not perfectly. Not easily. But honestly. Some wounds never close. They become part of who you are. But they do not have to define how you live. I am older now. My hands shake more. My steps are slower. But my eyes are open. And if my story does anything at all, I hope it reminds you of this. Truth is worth the cost. Silence is not. I am 74 years old now. That number still surprises me when I say it out loud. I never imagined I would live long enough to tell this story, much less survive the days when everything I believed about my family collapsed at once. There were moments during those 3 locked days in my own home when I was certain I would die without anyone ever knowing the truth. Moments when hunger, fear, and exhaustion blurred together until the only thing that kept me upright was stubborn love. When people hear what happened, they often ask me the same question. How did you find the courage to face someone who had already killed once? The answer is not what they expect. I was not brave. I was terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear make your decisions for you. In those quiet hours alone, I thought about Michael constantly. I remembered him as a boy, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while Eleanor cooked dinner. I remembered how serious he was even then, how he hated shortcuts and lies. He believed rules existed for a reason. He believed honesty mattered, even when it cost you. That belief followed him into adulthood and ultimately cost him his life. Losing a child is a pain that never truly fades. It changes shape, it softens around the edges, but it never leaves. What nearly destroyed me was not just Michael's death, but believing the lie that followed it. Believing that my son had been weak, dishonest, broken. That lie poisoned my grief. It robbed me of the right to mourn him as he truly was. When the truth finally came out, it did not bring relief the way I expected. It brought anger. Regret. Shame. I had failed to protect my son when he needed it most. I had trusted the wrong person. I had ignored warning signs because confronting them felt uncomfortable. That is a lesson I carry with me every day. Eleanor understood something I did not at first. Justice is not about revenge. Revenge ends nothing. Justice is about restoration. It is about making sure the truth survives even when the victim does not. It is about ensuring the harm stops with you and does not continue into another family, another generation. The work we do now is quiet. There are no headlines. No dramatic confrontations. Most days involve listening to frightened voices on the other end of a phone line. Elderly parents confused about missing money. Adult children unsure how to question someone they love. People who sense something is wrong but do not know where to start. We tell them the same thing every time. Trust your instincts. Ask questions. Document everything. Silence protects the guilty, not the innocent. I wish someone had told Michael that confronting Ryan alone was dangerous. I wish someone had told Eleanor and me to look closer sooner. But wishing does not change the past. Acting changes the future. Emily's journey has been the hardest to watch. Loving your child while holding them accountable is a complicated kind of pain. She carries guilt that may never fully lift, even though she was also a victim. I have learned that accountability and compassion are not opposites. They can exist together. She is studying now, preparing to help others who are trapped the way she once was. When I watch her speak to frightened women at the shelter, I see flashes of the sister Michael tried to protect. I believe he would forgive her. I believe he already has. Eleanor remains the strongest person I know. She staged her own death, hid from the world, and let me grieve her because she understood something fundamental. Survival sometimes requires unbearable choices. She carries that burden quietly, without seeking praise. She says she simply did what any mother would do to protect her family. Our life now is quieter than it once was. We wake early. We drink coffee on the porch. We argue about small things like whether the dog needs and believe them even when the truth disrupts your idea of family. Especially then. This story is not about revenge. It is about what happens when truth refuses to stay buried. It is about a father who chose to listen instead of ignore. A mother who chose strategy over despair. A daughter who chose accountability over fear. A son who chose integrity over safety. Michael once wrote something in his journal that Eleanor and I did not read until much later. It was tucked between pages of numbers and notes, almost an afterthought. It said, "If I do not make it through this, I hope someone continues the fight." Not out of anger, but out of responsibility. We continue it. Every family we help reminds me why this matters. Every saved inheritance. Every prevented abuse. Every voice that finds the courage to speak because someone finally listened. I know some people will hear this story and focus on the dramatic parts. The staged death. The confrontation. The arrest. But those moments are not the heart of it. The heart of it is what came before and what came after. The quiet decisions. The willingness to look at uncomfortable truths. The choice to act when silence would have been easier. I do not know why Michael had to die for this lesson to unfold. I will never understand that. But I do know this. His life mattered. His courage mattered. And because of that, other lives have been protected. If you are listening to this and something about it feels familiar, pay attention to that feeling. It may be telling you something important. Talk to someone you trust. Seek help. Do not wait for tragedy to force your eyes open. I am not a hero. I am an old man who answered a phone call and refused to look away. Anyone can do that. Anyone can choose truth over comfort. Thank you for listening. Your time honors my son's memory more than you know.